Hello everybody, so today we're going to get into 20th century European music, and I'm just going to talk about some of the dramatic changes that were going on, and let's get right into it. And so one of the big movements of the 20th century was Serialism, and Arnold Schoenberg is really the guy that's kind of at the front of this and developing what is known as atonal music. And basically, the concept here is that you're creating music on a different 12-tone scale, which is breaking away from kind of how modern music was being done at that point, okay? It's very structured, and there's like an order of succession set for specific values for pitch, loudness, and units of time. And the whole idea is it kind of lessens the role of intuition and emotion, and really in favor of what we've kind of referred to as like intellect and precision. Another guy that was really kind of seen as in the forefront of this was Olivier Messiaen. I probably said that wrong. Messiaen. Yeah, someone can tell me. I thought I had it. Who again also not only kind of structures this, but also brings into kind of the musical fold, like incorporates like Indian music, Greek plain chant, and folk music all kind of come together in his compositions. And really what these guys are trying to do is to structure music in a way that's just different than what it was before. All right. Now, one of the big guys here that was really the titan of this era was Richard Strauss. He was really big on kind of extending the boundaries of what traditional composers were doing at the time. Really influenced by like a lot of like philosophers and his approach to music. And he would also be very influential in film scores. Now, film becomes really, really big at this time. I kind of talked about that a little bit in some Cold War videos. And the music to movies is important as well. I mean, modern day, when you look at like the 1960s on, releasing soundtracks to films and is really, really important. And Strauss was really at the core of that. Probably his most famous score, also Sprach Zarathustra, which was featured predominantly in the beginning of 2001, A Space Odyssey by Stanley Kubrick. But, these works are huge. And you look at so many composers today that were influenced by this guy, not only in regular composing, but again, like musical scores and stuff like that. Is a different type of writing of music that's spreading out during this particular time. Another type of music at this time is minimalism. Now, with minimalism, the idea is that you're using like repeated patterns and with a like serious and steady pulsations with gradual changes over time. It's a little bit more tonal and more harmonic than some of the other music that we'd seen with this guy. And the guy really at the front of this is Philip Glass here, and his most famous work, Einstein on the Beach. But something I also want to get into is rock and roll. And rock and roll becomes a thing in Europe. And of course, Europe has given us perhaps the greatest band of all time, which I'll talk about more in a second. But they were hugely influenced by Americans. And we talk about the Cold War, and we talk about all these different types of stuff of American influence all over the world. But culturally, American influence has been really huge. And music is one of those areas. I mean, you can go almost all over the world to say in the different forms of music, whether it's rock and roll or country or rap and hip hop, and you see that presence across the world. And the 1950s is when that really starts. And the guys that were at the front of that were Little Richard, who I have over here, with Chuck Berry, two of the titans right there at the piano, Little Richard right here, Chuck Berry here, Big Joe Turner, who sang the original Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and Ray Charles. Like, these four guys are some of the earlier ones out in the early to mid-1950s that basically birthed rock and roll, which was this very unique American music that was just a combination of soul and R&B and gospel music, and bringing all that stuff together and throwing some electric guitars in there. And then after them, you had guys like Buddy Holly, Bill Haley, and of course Elvis Presley. And when you combine this music, I mean, it transcended racial barriers. It transcended, national barriers, and it worked its way into Europe. And during this era in the 20th century, of course, we have the Beatles. Yes, there's lots of other groups that we can get into, whether it's the Rolling Stones or the Who or whatever. But I'm just going to kind of settle down here on the Beatles. Arguably the greatest band in the history of rock and roll. the way that they influenced how music was done, to how you produce it, the types of concerts that they had. On the right was their final ever concert that they did on the roof of Apple Records there. But this music was so transformative. I mean, for my money, I'm probably going to listen to Revolver all day. But I mean, as far whether it's the early stuff from When I Want to Hold Your Hand to later on Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and Revolution and all these different types of songs that showed just what rock and roll music could be. And it was really, really incredible. And it is now a European thing. Okay, there are bands that come over and individual artists from all over Europe that have tremendous amounts of success, no matter what type of genre that we're talking about. And so we go everything from your old school classical music all the way up to, again, the greatest musician in history, that being Beethoven, to perhaps the greatest band in history, that being the Beatles, and this wonderful transformation of music throughout time. And Europe has really been at the forefront of it. All right, guys, hope you really enjoyed that, and I will see you soon.